Hey there, campers. My name's Kimmy.
And my name's Ryan.
We've noticed you stumbled upon our mystical campfire, so that means there's a solid chance you have some questions. Like,
why am I here? What's going on? And why are there cryptid and folklore creatures everywhere? And should I be worried about the Mothman dressed as a camp counselor swooping down to steal my s'mores?
Well, you've stumbled upon the Aloreing Campgrounds. Aloreing is a folklore podcast where every episode we dive into the history and lore of different creatures and cryptids you see wandering around these campgrounds.
And during each episode, we discuss the sightings, encounters, poems, history, fun, facts, and pop culture focused on our campfire topic that week. We hope through shared experience we can learn and make light about all the unknown corners of the universe.
So come take a seat around the campfire, make yourself at home, and listen to Aloreing Today anywhere podcasts are heard. Or watch videos on YouTube, or even go to our website, aloreing.com. That's ALOREING.com.
I'm Felicia.
And I'm Ian.
And we are the Paranormal Lovers. Hi, guys.
Hello, paranormal dudes and dudettes.
Welcome back to another week of the Paranormal Lovers.
We're back.
Week 15, halfway between 10 and 20.
Not bad.
Almost at, I don't know where I was going that. But, what did you love about this week, Bill?
Oh, you know what I liked. Or loved.
What?
Pinky Patel.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So we have the same thing this week.
We went out last night and had a really good time in Asheville and seen a comedy show.
Yes, Miss Pinky Patel. You can find her on Instagram.
She's hilarious.
She is hilarious, and I was like so excited to see her. She's smaller than I expected.
Same. I thought she was bigger.
I thought she'd be like this tall lady, but she's only a few inches taller than us. I'll give her that. She is taller than us, so we can't say much, but
this is true. It's not hard to do.
It's not hard to do, but it was a good time. If you ever get a chance to come up here to Asheville and see a show at the Orange Peel, I highly recommend it. This is not an ad for them, but it's a fun place. Right? Maybe. It's a fun place to...
Hey, Orange Peel, shoot me some tickets.
That'd be fantastic.
That'd be great.
All right. So this week, we are going to head over to Swain County, and we're going to go to Fontana, Lake Fontana.
Nice.
And the Road to Nowhere.
Love the Road to Nowhere.
Road to Nowhere. It is...
This place is spooky, y'all.
It's spooky, but I tell you what, the history behind it is so motherfucking infuriating.
Yeah, it's depressing.
Like, and it's a very common thing that happens with a lot of man-made lakes in this country.
Right.
Lake Lanier, which I will cover at some point, is... hands down, like, probably the worst, at least in the eastern United States.
Sure.
But today we're going to talk about Fontana. We've been to Fontana.
I love Fontana.
Together.
I know. Like, why haven't we went together?
I don't see. Here's the thing. I grew up swimming in oceans.
Right.
Lakes and rivers freak me the fuck out. And, like, Lake Placid really did me in.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? Maybe. And even like Loch Ness, as much as I love her as a cryptid, like that's still like there's something gargantuan in this lake.
Sure.
That I can't see. I'm good. You'd think I feel the same way about the ocean, which I don't really go out past where I can't touch, so.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, 75 years before the Talking Heads came out with their song Road to Nowhere, Alcoa, the Aluminum Company of America, was scoping out the Little Tennessee Valley for a suitable site for a new dam. Alcoa was and still is a manufacturer of aluminum parts mainly for the U.S. military. At the time, there were a handful of communities in the valley. This included Judson, Bushnell, Forney, as well as a few others. There were 1,311 families in the valley, as well as 2,043 graves. But this did not deter Alcoa By the 1300s, they had purchased the first 15,000 acres of what would be over 68,000 acres that they purchased for this project.
Wow.
Like, it's... When you... Like, we live here. We're really close to town. We're only 20 minutes from Asheville. And you don't really think about how massive the wilderness is in this area. Like, it's not Alaska massive, but there are places that it's that remote.
Yep.
And you're not going to get out there with a vehicle, even with four-wheel drive. Like,
nope. There's no roads.
There's no roads. At least there were no roads.
Right.
And in some places, there still are no roads.
Yep.
In comes the TVA, not the vape people, the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Yeah.
In layman terms, they are responsible for the well-being of the land and the lakes in that area.
You got to watch out for those guys if you're boating over there.
Yeah. Those are the guys you got to work out for. And I remember a few years ago, my mom's best friend she has a houseboat on Hiawassee, and there was something where they were going to, like, get rid of the houseboats and let it only be for, like, fixed houses.
Yeah.
And we were like, that's shitty.
Yeah.
They were wanting to be in control of this project as well to mitigate the risk to the nature environment, which, like, you're flooding a large part of this, getting rid of homes and natural habitats for animals. I don't really know what you're mitigating, but okay.
Right. Counterintuitive.
And they cared very little for the human lives that would be affected by this project.
Sure.
In the end, Alcala purchased 1,064 properties from the citizens in the valley. Many of them then and today feel like they had no choice in the matter. It was, take this money for this land and get out because we're going to flood it, or don't take it, but you still have to leave because we're going to flood it.
Right.
The average per acre that they got was $37.76.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I understand it was 100 years ago.
Right.
You know, but we've tried to buy land before, and you're lucky if you can get an acre for 10 grand.
Yep.
Like, it's still highway robbery. And if you're talking about a land that has mountain views, quote unquote,
right,
it's going to be more expensive, and then good luck paying to get your property where you can actually build a house and get to it.
Yep.
And, like, what are these citizens in this valley who live simple lives because they don't need anything else? What are they going to do against $1 million company that works for the U.S. government?
They can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and a government agency such as the TVA. Like, if you don't leave, you will be forcibly removed, which has happened in many other cases of these man-made lakes.
They almost did that with my parents' house. With the new 4-leaf over here.
Mm-hmm. I ain't surprised. But none of this stopped either organization. Alcala purchased their land and worked with the TVA on their project. It took a couple of decades to get the federal funding, that is, until the start of World War II. With Alcala being a huge manufacturer of aluminum, the plans were approved and funding was granted. So the task of evacuating the valley began. Dwayne Oliver, who was a child growing up in the valley at the time, tells of his experience watching the TVA burn buildings in his book, Hazel Creek from Then to Now. Quote, I recall standing on the graveyard hill in Possum Hollow, watching the Franklin store and the warehouse being put to the torch by the TVA. End quote. Of course, the TVA claims that all the buildings they burned down were just dilapidated shacks.
Of course.
But Oliver said many were buildings built of, quote, magnificent lumber such as 3x14 chestnut beams, end quote.
Dang.
Yeah. And I'm like...
They should have salvaged it all.
I mean, yeah, they could have salvaged it, or they could have just left it, because it's creepy, but it's also really, really cool to have towns under lakes.
Yeah.
Creepy, though.
Definitely creepy.
I'm
sure aquatic life, though, like, would thrive and stuff like that, though.
Yeah, and I mean, stuff like that, like, it just... I don't know. It's frustrating. In 1941, the TVA and Alcala signed the Fontana Agreement, which gave the TVA control of Fontana Dam, as well as the other dams that were part of the Tapaco Little Tennessee Valley Dams. Side note, Tapaco was the Tallahassee Power Company, which was purchased by Alcala in 1913. They just want to own everything.
Right. Had to tie the power into it. Which, I mean, is cool. Hydropower is cool, but...
I mean, it is cool. Hang on. In this agreement, Alcala would be the primary beneficiary of the power produced at the dam for at least 20 years. To this day, the TVA still controls the dam and the power plant, although the National Park Service kind of runs everything. Right. It's weird the way they all, like, commingle and work together.
Mm-hmm.
Not fun fact, none of the power produced at that hydroelectric dam has ever been used in western North Carolina. When electricity did come to the region, it was from Nantahala Power, which ironically is also a company owned by Alcala.
Right. And the TVA, I think.
Fun fact, though, kind of, power from the dam was and is still used at Oak Ridge.
Oh.
Oak Ridge was and is still today the first and largest site of the Manhattan Project.
Right.
They make parts for war weapons and enrich uranium.
Yep.
Still, to this day. And would you believe that, like, last year they had a small fire?
Oh, God.
In one of their reactors?
That's horrible.
Thankfully, they, like, got it contained.
Right.
And put out really, really quick. I give them credit for that. Like,
yeah.
I didn't really hear about it, which we don't watch a whole lot of news having a kid. But
my friend C went to protest the nuclear stuff there one year.
I was like reading it, and it was like they like worked with atomic weapons back then, and they worked with like nuclear weapons, and I was like, wait, aren't we like not supposed to have nuclear weapons? I thought there was like a whole agreement on that, but what do I know?
Right.
Okay, one of the towns that was flooded, Judson, was a bustling town of about 600 people, which in the 1900s, that's a pretty decent sized town for the Tennessee Valley. It had shops, a sawmill, and even a post office. During drawdowns, when they purposefully lower the water level, the town emerges for a short time. Fountains, graves, and other structures can be seen.
Nice.
You can, and I'm not sure if this is during drawdowns or if this is all the time, but a pontoon ride out on the lake will give you a bird's eye view of the town through water, which is spooky.
Totally.
And see, I remember going there. I was probably like 15 or 16, and I went with this dude. I remember swimming like from the shore to an island in the lake, and I just didn't. I didn't like it. It was dark. I couldn't see through the water. I didn't know how deep it was. I can't do it now.
Right.
Like my paranoia from my cannabis use, I cannot do it now. In the end, Fontana Dam cost $70 million. And this is this was 1930s to 40s. Still a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It stands 480 feet tall and is 2,365 feet long. It is the tallest dam of the Rockies, and when it was built, it was the fourth tallest dam in the world.
Wow.
The reservoir is roughly 11,700 acres, and there is about 240 miles of shoreline.
Right.
One of the main complaints that still lingers today is the loss of easy access to family grave sites. There are at least 4 graveyards that are above water, but getting to them either requires a very, very long, hard hike or a boat ride that ends in a long hike.
Right.
Venerating one's ancestors was an important part of life at this time, and even today, not being able to go out and visit whenever they want is a hard pill for most to swallow.
Sure.
I dumped my mother's ashes in the ocean. And, like, if I didn't have access to be able to go to the ocean, even if it isn't where I dumped her at, like...
Yeah.
I would be livid.
Right.
They do have Decoration Day. And I'm pretty sure that anyone can participate in it. But it's mainly a day to have the relatives go out. They'll take, like, a pontoon ride out. They'll decorate the graves and share a meal at the gravesite and tell stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Decoration Day, I guess, sounds a lot nicer, but it just sounds to me like a Day of the Dead.
Right.
Like a Fontana Lake Day of the Dead. Which
Sure.
is really, really cool.
That is cool.
And the reason why people are so angry, like, not even the fact that they're angry that they flooded the lake. And so, like, they have to take this boat ride out whenever they can or once a year to decorate their grave sites, which you can actually find pictures of online. And, like, it's really, really cool because, like, when we think of graveyards, you know, you think of, like, these lush green areas with these tombstones and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this graveyard, it's barren for the most part. There's, like, some, you know, weeds and stuff growing through it. And there's, like, these big, long mounds over the grave sites. And they'll put, like, flowers and stuff on it. It's really, really cool. But, yeah, it wasn't enough that they flooded the area. Like, that would be bad enough. But the broken promises given from the government to the people of this area are straight up bullshit.
Right.
And you will see a sign if you ever go up there. There's still a sign there to this day that says Road to Nowhere, a broken promise, and it has the date and then, like, a dash and a question mark.
Yeah.
When Fontana Lake was filled, it flooded Highway 288. This road was the only way to get in and out of the areas that held the family cemeteries. It was supposed to be replaced with another road that would go along North Shore, but by the 1970s, only 7.2 miles of it was ever built. Construction was halted for several reasons. One of the reasons that I saw in a source was that there seemed to be very hot rocks in the area. Like, it was snowing and the snowflakes would, like, melt as they touched the rocks. And there was a very strong smell of sulfur in the area. Which, like, I'm like, we've been hiking up there and
Never smelled it.
that's strange.
Right.
So they were worried about acidic runoff of rain flowing into the lake. Another reason that I saw in another source, and I only saw it in one source, was that the road would go through a sacred graveyard of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians. And so the chief was like, no, you can't do that here.
Right.
With all these different factors and the price of building a road that through that untouched wilderness of that part of the mountains, the road was never completed. It will never be completed.
Yeah.
In 2018, the National Park Service, who handles the, like, park part of the area, because it is in the Great Smoky Great Smoky Mountains National Park,
Right.
settled with Swain County for $52 million.
Wow.
Swain County does not get that money. The money is kept in a trust controlled by the state of North Carolina, and Swain County gets the interest off of the account.
What?
That is what it is.
Man, the government's so shady.
I know, right? Like, we're going to give you this money, but you can't actually have this money, but I guess we'll give you the money. Which, the interest on $52 million...
It's probably a lot.
It's probably a lot. And I don't know a lot about Swain County. I feel like it's not a very heavily populated county.
Right.
Like, it's a pretty, like, far out there in the wilderness kind of area. It's beautiful. You got Bryson City and stuff, but that's really all I know of it. So I struggled to find information on the paranormal side of this place. Like, a lot of spooky stuff, but there's only so far I can go back on the Google search.
Yeah.
You know, once you get to, like, 4 or 5 pages and you're not finding a lot, like... And I even, like, I use DuckDuckGo, which is very stringent in their, like, privacy and protection.
Sure.
So I tried Google, but it was, like, the same thing. And I was like, I'm going to take what I can find.
Yeah.
So, y'all bear with me. You know, we've been up there several times. I've never been afraid, but
I've got some chills in the tunnel.
knock on wood. That was me knocking on wood. Because after these two stories, I'm like, bitch, I hope these aren't real. I don't want to go up there anymore.
Right.
One of these is a blog post. One of these is from Reddit. So keep that in mind, but also try to keep your mind open.
Sure.
Okay. So, from Gummy Bear Lover 85 on yourghoststories.com. Gummy and two of her friends decide to go up to the tunnel to see what all the fuss was about. As they are walking up to the tunnel, Gummy begins to feel a tightness in her chest and it becomes hard to breathe. The closer they get, the more uncomfortable and uneasy Gummy feels. As they walk through the tunnel, they are taking pictures of all the tags on the wall, and they end up catching a few orbs in their photos.
Nice.
Yep. Gummy looks towards the exit side of the tunnel that leads onto the trail, and sees two hooded figures standing there beckoning her to them. She asks her friends if they can see them, but they do not. And I actually did see a photo, like, of her and her friends in the tunnel. So they did go up there. This one,
Right.
I believe a lot. The other one, I choose not to a little. On the way back through the tunnel, they are trying to take more pictures, but their phones and cameras start malfunctioning.
Nice.
Their flashlights, which had worked fine on the way in, sputtered out and died.
Oh, no.
Gummy closed her eyes and held on to one of her friends to help guide her out of the tunnel. Bad idea.
Right.
She could feel powerful, angry energy around her, and then the voices started.
Oh, no.
One of a man telling her to open her eyes, while others simply repeated her name. Once they left the tunnel, they stopped for a moment to check their electronics, which were working again. Gummy notices a group of people on a hill who look to be wearing buckskins. She yells a greeting to the group, only to be responded with a wave from the child and a giggle before the group turns around and walks away.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Neither of her friends saw any of it.
Wow.
Or heard any of it.
That's spooky.
Nothing. And they were like pissed. They were like mad that she saw things that they couldn't see. Like, bitch, count your blessings, okay?
Right.
This is the Reddit post from Helvira. I snooped on their profile. They have a ton of great stories, so this is where I'm leaning towards. This is probably more of a story.
Right.
I kind of want to believe it's more of a story because honestly, it's just fucking terrifying.
Right.
So, Hell's family has been in Bryson City for several generations. Her great-grandmother, who we'll call Babs, was a young married woman at the time Lake Fontana was built. And Babs was a mean woman. Her own children referred to her as, quote, the old bitch. Although I'm sure it was never to her face.
Right.
She would terrorize her grandchildren and great-grandchildren by telling them terrible tales, locking them in dark basements with a, quote, unquote, devil man, pinching them and pulling their hair. One of her favorite stories to tell them, and this is true, was of Nancy Dude. You ever heard of Nancy Dude?
Mm-mm.
This is true. Nancy was a Haywood County woman that murdered her granddaughter by burying her alive in a cave on top of Utah Mountain.
Dang.
And I was like, is this true? And I like Googled it, and it was like, Nancy Dude, Haywood County murder. And I was like, oh, God.
Wow.
Terrible. Babs would relish in terror, the terror she caused as she described in great detail how the girl perished in that cave. Hell would stay awake at night when she was sleeping over waiting for Babs to come to take her to a cave on top of a mountain. Babs' brother, who we'll call Dan, made the deadly mistake of coming upon a coven doing a ritual in the woods. He was working on construction of the North Shore Road in the late 40s when he went off the road to use the bathroom. He came upon a clearing where there was a circle of naked witches dancing and chanting. One of the women, who was old with long black hair, approached him. She reached out with a long, sharp finger and plunged it into his chest. There was no wound. There was no wound, no blood, just a painful burning sensation in his chest as if she had stabbed his heart. After a moment of staring into her dark eyes, she released him and he was able to run away. But over the next few days, his behavior and health took a sharp turn. Once he had slipped into a coma, his family sent for a doctor. But it was too late. By the time the doctor got there on horseback in the 1940s.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean, this was deep in Tennessee.
Right.
There was a deep rotting wound on Dan's chest right where his heart should have been.
Wow.
There were accidents during the construction of the road, mysterious death that mimics Dan's, and a decapitation. And this I question because you know me, my neurodivergency. I searched on newspapers.com, not an ad. But I couldn't find anything about it.
Right.
But then again, it's also possible, being that deep down in the woods and considering the doctor was still a man on horseback, like they may just not have had a newspaper.
Right.
You know? When Hel was about 6 years old, Babs took her to the tunnel. They start into the tunnel and go a good ways in till Babs stops and lets go of Hel's hand. The girl is terrified and calls out repeatedly for her great-grandmother, but gets no response other than someone brushing past her quickly. And then she hears Babs talking to someone. Quote, "Does she know?" A woman's voice said. I heard Babs' voice. She does not. How old is this child? The voice asked. 6, Babs said. I was too scared to tell Babs to knock it off. Her joke was not funny, and I was not amused. I was so afraid I remember wanting to pee my pants. You can give her up. She'll be summoned when the time is right, the voice said. End quote. Like, bitch, what? Hel felt a finger on her face, then a stinging sensation that moved over her eye across her forehead. Babs then grabs her hands and takes her out of the tunnel. Outside, Hel confronts her, which leads to an argument that ends quickly when Babs threatens to kill her if she told anyone. After this, Hel began seeing the dead. They came to her in dreams, so many of them coming to her, talking to her, all at the same time, and all so loudly. The dead are still with her today, and maybe forever. One night in her 20s, Hel was woken by being pinched. Babs was there to demand she go to the tunnel. Babs had given her up. And it was time. Turns out, this was the night that Babs died.
Oh, that's crazy.
Hel did her best to ignore the summons, but 10 years later she finds herself standing at the mouth of the tunnel with her camera. She finally goes inside, and as soon as she walks inside, she hears rushing water all around her. We know from experience there are no rivers or creeks around here.
Nope.
There might be a few waterfalls when it rains coming over the ends of the tunnels, but this was a sunny day.
Maybe some drips, but not like running water.
Yeah, and this was a sunny day. A cold wind begins to blow through the tunnel, and then the chanting started. Now, she may have heard of the chanting before if Dan had told Babs what he had heard in the clearing, but I can imagine in that moment she probably didn't realize it was the same chant that her great-uncle heard. Hands grab onto her, and she wants to run, but her feet are rooted to the ground. She then hears a voice, and a voice she knows. It's time, the voice says. Hel is cold, so cold she's shaking. She closes her eyes and then feels a finger touch her lips. Somewhere, somehow, some way, she found the strength to break free and run for the entrance. She startles a couple when she bursts out of the tunnel and stops only long enough to catch her breath and shake her head when they ask if she's okay, before she takes off to her car and speeds away. After this experience, there is always something dark lurking out in the woods. Sometimes her Sometimes her dog will bark at nothing, and at times she can see someone or something moving about in the woods outside of her house. She believes she knows who the voice belonged to, who she'd been given up to, and who that was that Dan encountered so many years ago. Spearfinger. I just got chills. A shape-shifting witch of Cherokee lore. But she's a story for another day.
Spooky.
Probably next week.
Right.
The road to nowhere and the whole Fontana area has a sad history. There is still a lot of pain and anger over the ways that things were handled. Today you can go camping, swimming, and boating on the lake. I've heard for years of the Volkswagen-sized catfish that lives in its depths. Which the depth of the lake is an average of 440 feet if it's like
wow
filled.
I never knew that.
Yeah, see why I don't want to be swimming across it to the lake. It's too deep. And don't forget the pigs. There are wild boar that call these wood home, so beware if you should run into one.
Yeah, be careful of them boar.
Try and find a tree to climb.
Short.
And that is Fontana Lake and the road to nowhere.
Nice.
Yeah, so the first one I see, the first story, I can definitely get that.
The second one's terrifying, though.
Right? That's why I'm like, bitch, I hope this is like some fanfic or something, because if this is true...
See, I've been camping out there, too.
Like, for one, your granny, babs.
We went about 4 miles out and camped one weekend when I was 13.
Was that the weekend that you were with your friends and like your parents had to come out there?
Yeah.
To save you guys?
Yeah. They had to come bring us food because we ran out of food.
You just sent in a bunch of like...
We had the munchies, so...
This is the thing about like the 80s and the 90s. Like, this shit does not fly. The shit we were allowed to get away with when we were younger does not fly in 2023.
Right.
I mean, it might in some areas, I guess. Like around here, I know there's probably still people that send their teenagers out to camp in the woods, but...
The only spooky part about it was there was a bear trap at our campsite when we got there. So we were like, what is this big, like, cage in our campsite that we're supposed to be at? Because we had to buy permits for the campsite. And so when we, roughly found the campsite that we were going to, it had a bear trap in it and didn't look like that the park rangers wanted anybody to, like, camp there because, I mean, there's a bear trap there. My brain, like, automatically goes to, like... Is it a bear trap?
Or did they, like, let one out?
Or is it a child trap?
I don't know.
Like, is there some creepy man living in the woods that's going to kidnap these kids in this trap? And
I mean, it was 4 miles out past the road to nowhere, so...
I mean, it was probably just a bear trap set out, or, like you said, they released one. But I feel like if they released one, they probably would have took the trap with them.
Right.
But, I don't know. My brain just automatically thinks of, like, all the... true crime or
it kind of makes me ask, like, how did they get it out there too? Because I mean, that's like a long ways with no road to drive any vehicle on.
Well, I mean, if it was like the Forest Service or something, they just toted it out there. Like, they probably had 5 or 6 people toted out there, or like a whole team if they're looking to like trap something.
I mean, it took us like, I want to say like 2 or 3 hours to walk there.
Yeah.
With full packs and everything,
Which they may have also had the benefit of like 4-wheelers or something.
Maybe, yeah.
They
you could probably get out there with a 4-wheeler.
Yeah, probably. But maybe. I don't know.
If you guys get a chance, go to the road to nowhere and go walk through the tunnel. It's a spooky place.
Yeah, it's definitely spooky. It does get cold in there.
Yeah, when you're in the center of the tunnel, this is a tunnel that is supposed to be for a road, so it's a big tunnel, and It goes straight through the side of this mountain. And so when you're on the inside of it, it's pitch black. Like, you can't see your hand in front of your face because there's absolutely no light in the middle of it. And you can hear, like, the acoustics of the tunnel. Somebody could be on one side and you could be on the other side, and you can, like, hear them whispering or talking, at a low tone on the absolute other side of it. And it's like, how long do you think that tunnel is?
I am not 100% sure. Sorry guys. Let me look it up real quick.
It's a long tunnel because it takes a little while to walk through it.
Yeah, it is a pretty decent tunnel, and I 100% recommend taking a flashlight.
Oh yeah.
Make sure that you change the batteries in it. Have fresh batteries in it. For real. I can't. Like, I remember we went through there last year or the year before last. We went up there with our kid.
Yeah. With
and
Patty.
we had lanterns walking through there, and
Yep.
Patty and Ian we're all just looking at the graffiti on the walls because that's what we were interested in. But it's one person I saw in a comment had said take a flashlight because they had almost not taken one, and then they almost stepped in a pile of horse shit.
Yeah,
because people do take their horses up there and ride through the tunnel. So it is a 1,200-foot tunnel.
Wow.
Yeah. Built
Pretty
for
long.
a scenic drive that was never completed.
Nope.
It's just such bullshit the way they can go in and take property and not give you what it's worth.
And there's spooky stuff that's went on there other than what we said too.
I feel like that's
I want to say a bunch of people died building that tunnel.
Probably. I couldn't really find, that's what I was looking for when I looked on newspapers.com.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking to see if there was reports of accidents and stuff that happened up there, but I couldn't really find anything outside of Charlotte.
I'm sure there was, because when they're building tunnels through the mountains here, they run into problems and mining accidents and stuff like that.
Yep, they sure do.
They're pretty much cutting straight through these mountains.
Yep. And we were driving home last night from Asheville, and I was looking when we were coming through from Buncombe into Haywood. All the rain.
Yeah.
Because it's been raining nonstop since yesterday. And I'm like, can we just stop blasting through mountains?
Right.
Build the road over the fucking mountain, please.
Yeah.
Up and over. Just build it up and over.
There was a guy at work that was telling me to do the road to nowhere because he knew spooky stories or whatever, and he said that because he grew up over there in Bryson City, he said that there used to be he said Satan worshipers, but
well, that one story with the coven was about a coven of witches that worshipped Spearfinger,
right?
Who is a shape-shifting witch of Cherokee legend and lore, which I will do next week.
But he said they used to meet and congregate at the tunnel or whatever.
Which honestly, I'm pretty sure there's been plenty of little covens and groups of whatever worshipers that have been up there, because it's
sure.
You live in an area like this and you have spooky places like that. People are going to utilize that.
Yeah.
Even if they're not being serious and really putting any effort into it.
Right.
And then for those of us who are serious about our craft and put effort into it, it's a perfect place. Especially if you have ill intent, I feel like.
Right.
So yeah, you guys go ahead and follow us on Instagram at The Paranormal Lovers. You can send us an email at theparanormallovers@yahoo.com. If you feel so inclined, you can come find us on Patreon for $3 a month. You get Q&As, fan requests, and early access to the show. We will, like this week, we recorded on Saturday, so we'll release it on Saturday. What What was the other thing, Bill?
YouTube.
YouTube.
Like, watch, and subscribe.
Yeah, like, watch, and subscribe. Send us a comment. If you feel so inclined on Apple and Spotify, you can rate and leave a review. I'm not sure you can leave a review on Spotify, but you can rate us as well. And you can leave like a comment on the episodes now.
Sure.
What did you think about this episode? Leave a comment.
Let us know.
Yeah, for sure. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.